and welcome to the All Societies platform for the American Ethical Union. I'm Condra Sears, the president of the board of directors for the AEU and a member of the Baltimore Ethical Society. I want to thank the All Societies Platform Committee for inviting me to moderate today's panel discussion on building an intergenerational movement for climate justice. We have an amazing panel of guests today, bringing diverse perspectives and experiences. They represent a variety of organizations working in the climate justice space and are actively engaged in efforts to build an intergenerational movement, particularly within climate justice movement. Our first panelist is Helen Mancini, who is a senior at Stuyvesant High School and a climate and social justice organizer with Fridays for Future NYC, where she has planned 4 global school strikes and many local rallies. She was also a speaker and lead organizer for the 2023 March to End Fossil Fuels, which mobilized 75,000 people. Adarnsola Marian Babawale is an abolitionist and college student majoring in global environmental studies. A poet, sustainable fashionista, and artist, Ade also considers herself a steward of the land and a solution-based organizer. She advocates for eco and housing justice, as well as food sovereignty. Her climate activism has included involvement with Future for Fridays and the No Brooklyn Pipeline movement. Joining her daughter, Helen, is Eliza Clark, who was inspired to take an active part in the climate movement because of the example set by her daughter. Eliza joined Climate Families NYC in 2022 and now serves as one of its volunteer co-chairs. She regularly participates in climate actions, and she and her daughter wrote about the urgent need for parents to get involved in climate activism for Teen Vogue. Pat Almanrode is an attorney and a longtime climate activist. He has worked with 350 NYC and other local and national groups, and is currently a co-facilitator of Third Act NYC, as well as Third Act Lawyers. Pat has been particularly interested in the intersection of law and climate advocacy and in the role of the faith community in the climate movement. He was instrumental in organizing faith participation in the 2014 Climate March. And our last finalist is Monica Weiss, who is a longtime ethical culture member, retired educator, and climate activist. Since retiring from teaching, she has trained as a climate reality leader, completed the Project Drawdown workshop, and is on the 350 NYC Steering Committee and the Third Act NYC Coordinating Committee. Monica is committed to empowering youth and has focused much of her activism on creating welcoming spaces for many youth groups to meet and organize at the New York Society for Ethical Culture, including Fridays for Future. Welcome to all of you, and I now invite Monica to introduce the video.
Okay, Audrey has curated a wonderful, very short video for us in 3 parts. The first part is going to be Fridays for Future, most recent climate strike that you'll see from September. The second brief video is going to be Ade and Shie Bastida. We call them elders in the climate movement. They're young elders, not like the older elders. Teaching a beautiful chant to this next generation of climate youth activists. And the third short video is an example of climate families and Third Act doing the intergenerational climate family action in front of Citibank headquarters in July of this past summer. Enjoy.
For every single human, we have come to win. We are the movement, liberation movement. For every single human, we have come to win. We are the movement, liberation movement. For every single human, we have come to win.
When the fire gets high, when the smoke rolls in, when the people rise and you hear us sing, it's the end of fossil fuels, it's the end of fossil fuels. When the water gets high, when the flood rolls in, when the people rise and you hear us sing, it's the end of fossil fuels, It's the end of fossil fuels. When the heat gets high and the sidewalks singe, when the people rise and you hear us sing, it's the end of fossil fuels. It's the end of fossil fuels. When we organize, when we fight to win, when the people rise and you hear us sing, it's the end of fossil fuels. It's the end of fossil fuels. You all have beautiful voices.
Those are bad, they make us sad. Climate change, we all fall down. But renewables are good, fund them like you should. Climate justice, we all rise up. Ready for another story? Fuels are bad, they make us sad. Climate change, we all fall down. Good, fund them like you should. Climate justice, we all rise up.
Thank you for sharing that compilation. So I'd like to welcome or invite our panelists in to begin the conversation. And I would like each of you to, starting with Monica, to tell us about yourself and how you came to the climate movement.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chandra. Everyone has a story, and this is my story. I'm a longtime member of Ethical Culture. And for me, doing climate activist work is an expression of ethics in the most profound and deep way. When I retired from teaching about 12 years ago, I turned my attention to environmental work, and I joined 350 NYC, which shortly after that was meeting at Ethical Culture. We created a space for monthly meetings in our building. When I retired and I joined this movement, I realized that divestment from fossil fuels was a very important strategy to undermine the efforts of the fossil fuel industry. And this is what was driving climate change. So as I became involved in the divestment movement, I also came to be aware that the very pension that I was collecting from the New York City Board of Education, Teachers Retirement Fund, had sizable investments in coal, oil, and gas, which really caused me a lot of discomfort. I felt very betrayed when I learned this, and it felt like a betrayal of everything that I had been doing for my entire professional career. When one works with youth and young people, there is an inherent promise of a future. So everything we do is related to ensuring their future, preparing them for a future, inspiring them to think big. And this seemed like a betrayal of that very basic philosophy on my part. So I joined the divestment movement, and for very personal reasons. And several years into this, a young boy named Ajani Stella, who was a New York City public school student, contacted 350 NYC because his teacher had done, I guess, a segment on climate change. And she assigned her students to research a solution to climate change. And Ajani, at the ripe age of 9, decided that divestment was his preferred project. So he reached out to us. We invited him to a meeting, and he spoke very eloquently about this and had created a petition, which we all signed. And somehow we all got behind Ajani's work. We expanded his petition. And many of the teachers in the group, the retired teachers, decided that we needed to speak directly to the Teachers Retirement System Pension Board. So we managed to get a meeting with them, and 3 of us spoke, but the first one who spoke was Ajani Stella, as probably one of the biggest stakeholders in what decisions the adults in the room make. And this was sort of the beginning of my understanding that this needed to be an intergenerational effort. These are the people that we do this for, these youngsters, and we need to step in this space with them, support them, lift up their voices, and walk beside them. And we need to be the adults in the room when the people in power are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, to be continued.
I first got involved actually because of a lot of the organizing that adults before me did. So I went to the People's Climate March. My mom took me, and then in 2019, I saw the youth leadership of Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Future movement, and I was in 7th grade at the time. I was just blown away. I knew I wanted to be exactly like them because I was really scared about what I was learning in science class, and I needed to take that fear and put it into something real. And then when I started high school 4 years ago, I joined my Fridays for Future chapter and started organizing climate strikes. And we had our meetings at Ethical Culture, just like the Fridays for Future of 2019 did. And I got to meet Monica and Ade and so many amazing people. And then, Mom, do you want to go?
Okay. Let's see. Climate has been on my mind for a long time, but I didn't really know, what to do about it. And so when the People's Climate March, we brought Helen, and it was amazing. My husband brought her to see Greta in 2019, and then when she started organizing, we would go to the marches, to the strikes twice a year. And I would always look around and think, well, where are the other parents? Because, when you go to like a sporting event, like my other daughter played volleyball. Okay. We would go to the volleyball games and all the other parents would be there and you would chat and, have a whole thing going on, bring food, whatever. And this is like, felt like we were the only ones there. And what were we doing there? But one day, someone approached me with a clipboard because we have a little daughter too, who's younger, and we had her in the stroller and said, do you want to be part of a parents group? We're taking names. So I signed up I said, okay, great. Yes, I do. And that was Climate Families New York City, which is a really wonderful group. And so what we do, I've been part of for a few years, and we do direct action, different kinds of direct action. And with kids, we bring the young kids, and we love to partner also with Fridays. And we've started partnering with Third Act. And like in the video, that was a really fun action at City. But we've done a lot of other actions at City. The first action I ever did with them was going to Larry Fink's house in Westchester, the CEO of BlackRock. And we brought kids in the car and we went, just like stood outside his house, some signs and a letter. And actually his wife came out and we gave it to her. And, it's like, there's something about working as a family, that gives you a different kind of access to people in power. And we did a play-in at Governor Hochul's office right here on 3rd Avenue. And we went in with the kids and we just stayed with our signs and played in their office. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? We're not going to kick out a bunch of toddlers, and they were pretty confused. So that's the kind of thing we do. And we join the marches and we try to show up with the kids and for these kids. And, because we're all very we're just doing what we can, and that's what I'm doing. So
That's a beautiful strategy. Nobody's going to kick toddlers out. I'd like to invite Ade into the conversation. Now, tell us, we've heard a little bit about your connections to Fridays for Future, but tell us more about yourself.
Yes, of course. So my first, I have to like really go way back, and I'll keep it cute and sweet. My introduction to climate injustice and like understanding that I was born in a changing world that was changing because those in power before me like made an irresponsible decision to continue like polluting the earth started in my fourth grade science class. So you're probably wondering like how. I had this really cool science teacher that let us use a flood simulator, and they gave us some numbers to like see how our city would look in coming years if it flooded first 1 feet, right? Then 5 feet, then 10 feet, and then 20 feet. So I never forgot that experience because after that class ended that day, our teacher brought us to like our term for that semester, like grade school. I'm in college now, so like I call it a semester, but like back then our term in science for the year, which was climate change. And I didn't really like understand too much then, but then I thought, wait, if my city could flood within my lifetime, doesn't that mean like we're all in danger? So that was my frame of understanding from really young, from being in fourth grade, about 8 years old. And then I come from a Nigerian American background. So if you know like the history of colonialism, Nigeria is very polluted. The Niger Delta is one of the most polluted rivers in the world. And I had learned about that from my mom, the story of Ken Saro-Wiwa, who he was an indigenous activist. Him and 8 other people were unjustly tried for protecting the Ogoni River in the Niger Delta region. And they were unjustly, executed for protecting that river. And I thought to myself, if this can happen like shortly before my lifetime, what's happening now? You know? So my frame of understanding for climate injustice is how does experiences that happened before inform like how I show up today? And how we organize and strategize today. So I really got involved, like being out on the streets and meeting people was the 2019 climate strike, same as Helen. I was in 11th grade at the time, and I had a really cool principal. He let me use the megaphone after like our high school marched over the bridge and dispersed. I was like, just bring it back on Monday. So that was like a great experience, and I, connecting with people, amplifying, and just speaking truth to power. Because I fundamentally believe that as youth, we need to take the reins of power back and continue to build intergenerational connections, to learn from our elders, as well as amplify our perspectives and our understandings of how these issues are going to impact us within our lifetimes, you know, and seeing the interconnectedness of the struggle across different borders. So after the 2019 strike, I became more involved with Fridays for Future. And then the following year, we were out on the streets protesting for the injustices that happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and just, seeing the issues interconnected between injustices of Black life and climate injustices, environmental injustices. And I learned that they built a pipeline through my neighborhood. So I joined No North Brooklyn Pipeline Organization, which as a coalition, what we seek to do is like build connections with people fighting against pipelines, from the Cricket Valley pipeline to the Mountain Valley pipeline, going through different areas of like Northeast America, and just like seeing how it desecrates BIPOC communities, how these companies, right, like National Grid that built the pipeline through North Brooklyn, they specifically rerouted it, they specifically rerouted it from a white community into several black and brown communities. So we see the insidiousness of the racism and how they try to engineer these toxic infrastructures through our communities. And we have to call it out every step of the way, hold officials accountable, deny when they try to ask more money from the state, because they did try to ask the Public Service Commission for $3 billion last year. And we went upstate and we said, no, we shut that down. So we need to inform our communities and continue to organize, because it takes our proactivity and our understanding, and like I said, building the intergenerational connections for us to know how to like really beat the evil that is climate change, capitalism, and racism, and neocolonialism, because they all work hand in hand. So that's a little bit about like how, well, a lot of bit about how like I got involved in like seeing the interconnectedness. And my modus operandi is music and poetry, because I believe we need to express. That's how our societies have done it for generations as human beings. And we need to continue doing that, because it brings joy to the movement, but it also brings a righteous sense of just expression, you know? I always tell my friends and comrades, bring your anger, bring your joy, bring your optimism and your fear, but most especially your courage to the front line, because that's what's most important. Courage in our voices, courage in the connections we build, and the courage and understanding what it takes to fight for a better world and being the co-creators of it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ade, for highlighting the global nature of this work, but also how it intersects with other really pressing issues in society. And now for our last panelist, Pat, tell us about yourself and the organization that you work for.
Sure. Well, thanks very much for having me for this program. Very happy to be here, and especially with so many dedicated and articulate colleagues. I'm very impressed with what everybody's had to say. I think I first got involved in climate activism probably back in 2009, which just happened to be when I first heard of 350.org. And all of a sudden, it's sort of, there was a framework for me that made sense to be able to talk to people about what was going on. It was something concrete. If we got over 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, things were going to change drastically for the worse. We, of course, already are beyond that. But it gave me a way to talk about it with people. And it also gave me a community to be a part of, and an opportunity to organize on a large scale, because this is, I think, the sort of problem that's really just the prime example of something requiring mass action. It's important, of course, that we all do our part, that we all recycle, we all, drive Priuses, whatever it is, but that alone is not going to do it. We have to be able to move our governments, we have to be able to move our societies, and that's only going to happen on a mass scale. So the fact that 350.org was working with that explicitly in mind really appealed to me. And I think that's why I got involved in helping to organize the People's Climate March in 2014. As time went on, it became clearer and clearer to me that I and my generation had a real responsibility here. We were, frankly, the ones that screwed this all up. So it was up to us to step forward and try to fix it, try to help those that are coming after us maintain a livable planet. And then when I became a grandfather, which was in 2016, that became more and more urgent for me. Unfortunately, there was a period of time in there where I had to sort of step back for some personal reasons and career reasons and whatnot. But then I think it was in October of 2020, I happened to catch the tail end of a radio interview with Bill McKibben, who, of course, was the founder of the founder of 350, and now also the founder of Third Act. And he was talking about Third Act, and I heard just enough to know that's for me. That's where I need to be. That's where I need to put my energy and my focus. So I went on my laptop right away and signed up, and have been just as involved as I can be with Third Act ever since. It's been a real opportunity to meet others in my age cohort that have the same concern, and to work again on a mass scale, and to work intergenerationally, which has been very important to us from the start. And I'm very glad to have the opportunity to discuss that aspect of things with folks today.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I guess I'll work backwards now. So each of you have has talked about your experience, and you've come into this movement at different points, obviously different inspirations, right? Guided by different different things that sparked that interest for you. So could you share for us what your experience has been like working across generations? Because that you've all expressed like that is a very intentional part of the work you do. So sharing your experience and possibly some like strategies that you have employed to do this work. And Pat, I'll ask you to go first, please.
Sure. Well, thanks. I think one of the things I've learned in doing this work, and especially this summer when we were involved, Third Act New York was involved very heavily in the Summer of Heat at Citigroup. Just several months of concentrated direct action trying to shut down Citigroup. Obviously not shut down Citigroup, but shut down for a couple hours every time we were there, blocking the doors, preventing the workers from getting in. We had, as you may have heard, we had 700 arrests over the course of the summer. And as it happened, the largest group, the plurality of those 700 were third actors. I guess that's because we had the most time to get back out there and get arrested again and again and again. But at any rate, it was a real learning experience, especially with regard to working with younger people. The organizers of Summer of Heat were younger than I, and we involved Climate Families, we involved Fridays for Future. And I think the thing that I really learned was the importance of listening to one another and the importance of really trying to understand where we're both or where we're all coming from. And sometimes that was frankly not that easy. And I want to give an example. One of the Summer of Heat was organized by themes. There were weekly themes. There was an Elders Week, there was a Families Week, there was a Faith Week, and there was a Palestinian Solidarity Week. A lot of our members in Third Act NYC, well, we're all older folks, and a lot of our folks happen to be Jewish. It was a difficult thing for them to really understand why and how it was important to have a Palestinian Solidarity Week in Summer of Heat. But it was a real opportunity to hear from other folks, mostly younger folks, about why that was important. And, I hope we showed up enough. I personally am going to make an effort to make sure that we continue to show up. But that was a real example for me of how important it was to listen to one another, and to try to understand and try to support the goals that each other have. So I think maybe I'll end there. That was really my takeaway from the Summer of Heat as far as working intergenerationally.
Thank you for sharing that experience. Ade, I'll invite you to talk about what it's been like for you working across generations.
Yeah, it's been very insightful because I learned a lot of strategy from my seniors, and I'm also very humbled every time. Sometimes as youth, we come to understanding of these issues and like how we are uniquely poised, just, in the sense of like our righteous anger, our hopes and optimism for like tackling them. And then we can even at times be discouraged, like, oh, like people have been fighting this for like how long? Like, what difference can I make? But I came to the understanding that when we are facing against systems, we are also fighting against, principalities. And it's also like based off how I was raised. So I always had like a whole bunch of elders like taking care of me. I had lived in Nigeria for 2 years with my grandma, and my grandma taught me patience. Patience is a virtue, and patience is as well. It's a balance. You got to know when to be patient about what, and then when to like, steady yourself and be impatient about something that you are, very steadfastly like wanting to like go towards and like get at. So, in organizing sense now, outside of a familial sense, I see that when we are struggling towards something greater, and that there are those that have been like doing, this fight and organizing like for just as long or even longer than I've been alive, that I need to pace myself. I cannot burn out. That's a strategy. I see self-care as an extension of community care, because you cannot fight and tackle systems if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not checking in with your community to see where your peoples is at, what their capacity is, right? And also how you are doing mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So I learned a lot of self-care from a few friends, self-care like tactics, and like in organizing tactics, capacity when it comes to holding our electees accountable, and like just like going after them relentlessly. Like, what's the update like with this legislation, because we really don't have time to waste.
Mm.
And being impatient in that sense is definitely a virtue. Not giving them too much leeway, because if you let them shenan once, they're gonna shenan again. You can't let elected officials have too much leeway when it comes to passing life-changing legislation. That's one thing I've learned in organizing with my elders, and intergenerationally, and also building relationships just outside of an organizing space, in that community care sense, because I am a thorough believer of community care is also an extension of self-care, like I mentioned. And we need to check in with our people, see how we're doing, you know, because organizing can be tough, but just because we are organizing and fighting against tough systems doesn't mean we have to be like tough on each other. It means we have to have a certain level of care and tenderness, and also if we have criticisms, knowing how to handle that with care. So yeah.
Thank you for that and that gem you dropped. Helen and Eliza, so you talked a little bit about how working as a family is pretty special. Can you expand on how, I guess, the differences in your experience working across generations as, child and parent?
Yeah. Um, I just want to say that I am actually incredibly lucky to have a mom like the mom I have, because so many people in Fridays for Future have parents who don't support what they do. Or if they do, they don't really care. They push back on their political targets, tell them they're being too extreme. Or I've met kids who have climate denier parents. And I mean, how to get over that disconnect, that's so difficult, because it's your future, that you are feeling not supported by like the people, who are biggest to you and biggest in your world. So I feel really lucky to have a mom like I do, because I think when you're facing something that is so scary, it's much easier for it to not be like a us versus them, like us who are young versus them who've already lived on this like planet for a long time. Like it should be like a family fighting something together, because that's so much safer and that's so much more enjoyable. And it makes it less scary. Like everything is less scary when you have your mom with you, right? So that's the same thing for fighting climate change. And it also just like what Ade was talking about, capacity wise, there's so many things that young people bring to the table that no other group does, and so many things that we can't. Like, for example, we didn't have a space to meet because, you know, we don't have any money. We can't rent out like an office space. But Monica from Ethical Culture gives us a space to meet on weekends. Or when we were planning the big march to end fossil fuels, we needed like resources to print flyers, but we were the ones who were excited to go out every single day and stand in parks and on college campuses giving out the flyers. But we needed help printing those flyers, designing them. And that's where different generations can work together, like all coming at task from all different angles. And I think that that creates a lot more of a like safe and efficient, honestly, space to work on things and work on projects. So I'm really grateful for all of the intergenerational organizing that I have done.
Yeah,
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Eliza.
I guess I'll add to that, but yeah, for me, it's just been really joyful to join in this work. I feel very grateful that I found climate families. You know, the other moms and parents in that group are so great, and they're like my parenting community for my younger, you know, daughter, and also just like comrades, whatever, in the work, and they're so really brave people. But then doing it with Helen has just been amazing. But you know, when I'll just to go back to like what works when and strategies for working intergenerationally. You know, I think it's really cool to have your cohort, you know. I mean, because you really relate on a generational level in your, but it's and then you come together and then you come apart, you know, and it's sort of like there's a rhythm to that. And there you need to give space, you know what I mean? Give space. Like, for example, I don't want to be a hovering mom with Helen and her friends and like putting my nose into whatever they're organizing. I don't do that at all. But if she needs something, I'm like, yes, I'm there, you know, and then it's also just showing up like bodies, you know, and bringing snacks. And, you know, we try to do that mom stuff that like you would do at a soccer game. And then we do our own thing and showing that we can also, you know, be brave and like be out in front, be on the front line part of the work. And that it doesn't always have to be young people putting themselves out there in a risky way. And I really admired what happened at Summer of Heat and the way these different groups were like taking turns and kind of backing each other up. It was really amazing to watch. And we were just a small part of that. But the one time the New York Times wrote about Summer of Heat was when we all came together and did that 3 generations action, which I thought was really remarkable because it's compelling as just a more public narrative, you know? So I think to do that in intentional, you know, planned ways, and you know, and get it out in a public way is really like strategic, you know. And I'll stop, but I also want to thank Monica for giving the kids, yes, the space at Ethical. That's been so great for them. So.
Yes, so Monica, yeah, share with us. You talked, you know, in your introduction about how your inspiration was this 9-year-old, right? Can you share more about your experiences working intergenerationally?
Sure. So I'd just like to go back a little bit also, everyone, excuse me, referencing sort of a turning point. And when Greta Thunberg started her climate strike, her school strike for the future, with the message that there was no reason to go to school if you weren't going to have a future. That was the message. That's a powerful message. And that was a real eye-opener. And she inspired an entire generation and a global movement of young people to step in to a space of empowerment that really had never been seen, ever, ever. So it was a really important turning point in the history of the youth climate movement. And in New York City, there was a young girl, Alexandria Villasenor, who was 14 at the time, who was living in New York City, who was inspired by Greta's actions. And she wrote her own little sign on a piece of cardboard and decided to sit in front of the United Nations every Friday and strike for climate as well. And she did that by herself for the better part of a year. She became sort of a, I guess, a regular on the bench outside the UN with her mom, just a little ways down also to make sure she was safe, but not to intrude. And little by little, she got the attention of media, passersby, UN people coming and going. Other youth joined her. And this was in the spring of 2019. There was a big youth climate strike in New York City, which many of us joined. They marched up Central Park West to the Museum of Natural History and held a rally there. And that was sort of the prelude to what was going to happen in September. And the organizing that happened during the summer, June, July, August, until the march occurred in September and Greta joined, was done by that generation of Fridays for Future, the Alexandrias and the Shias and the others from the various high schools around New York City. And it was extraordinary. We also opened our doors for that organizing. They met at Ethical Culture every week for about 12 weeks or longer. And what I learned, and what those of the adults in the room that were trying to support this learned, was that this was a moment where young people were finding their voices and taking their power. And the assumption that, you know, adults knew better than they did about how things work and how things needed to get done was a notion that was quickly dispelled. I think those of us who were paying attention realized we had to listen, we had to step back, we had to follow their lead, support their work, and really respect that these were the biggest stakeholders in this conversation. So that was a huge lesson, I think. And the takeaway from that also was that all of the adults who were so impressed with the youth, including starting with Greta, but all of the youngsters that have done this work in the last 5 years and have said, wow, they're terrific. They're gonna fix this. They're gonna save the world. They're gonna solve the climate crisis. I think we need to reflect on how inappropriate that is, because we have no time to wait for someone else to fix this. So the people who were most involved in causing the problem are the ones that need to step forward and take responsibility and help solve it. We can't wait for the youngsters to step into positions of power and authority to fix what we screwed up. So I think, and that's bringing us to third act. Bill McKibben always says, you know, those of us who are elders in the movement are closer to the exit than the entrance. So the issue of time, the limited amount of time that we all have to solve this and to work together is the big takeaway here. So it's urgent. We have just under 5 years to make the systemic changes that we need to see. And that's why we all have to step in.
Thank you. We are running a little short on time, but I think it's important. You know, you've all talked about like your inspirations and some of the challenges, but if everyone could briefly share what you think is like one structural challenge that you see is in the way of doing work within this intergenerational.
Bye, Joey.
That would be, that will be the last question. So we'll go backwards, Monica, Helen, Eliza, Ade, and Pat. So Monica, one
Okay,
special
well, I'll be brief. Yeah, I mean, I think the inspiration comes, from the community building and the cross-generational work. That is inspiring. It's joyful, and it helps to channel the grief and the rage and the disappointment and so forth. So being part of the solution is the antidote to being part of the problem. And I think some of the biggest challenges are I guess, the entrenched power and the inability to influence the institutional power that is resisting the change that's needed. So I think the movement itself is shifting towards paying attention to this and using this as an inflection point to influence the systems of power in a way that Pat discussed. And I think that's where the elders can step into this space. And many of us have decided that we have the luxury of getting arrested and participating in nonviolent civil disobedience and whatever is needed, right? There's scientists and lawyers and educators, and really it's a space that we all need to step into and to step up. Very important. There's no time to waste.
Helen and Eliza.
For challenges, structural challenges, for activism, I would say, in terms of the cohort that I'm in, sort of the sandwich generation, as they say, with the kids and a lot of caregiving responsibilities. People are very crunched for time, feeling overwhelmed by life, and then you put this on top of it, and it's so just choosing your moments, I think, very important. Choosing, and we try to limit the things we ask of our members, and also have them be things, but having them be things that they bring their kids to, that are fun, and educational and joyful for the kids and community building, but also confronting systems of power. Is we just try to be very intentional about how we plan things. And that's really key. And then we have some things people can do from home. So, but yeah, not getting too overwhelmed and too frustrated by these enormous roadblocks is, providing community to people as well as the activism is, I think, what we try to do.
Yeah, I'll be very short, but I think the biggest challenge that we're facing is like this is a lot of what Greta Thunberg talked about how the people in power like to congratulate young people for taking action but do nothing about it. I mean, I've organized 6 mass climate protests of different sizes, and when I got into this work, I did not think it would take 6 to get where we are today, which is expanding and exporting more fossil fuels than ever and being the #1 exporter in the world and producer in the world. Like, I didn't think things would be worse than when I got involved when I was 14. And that's really scary. Like, we can't pretend like things are working out or that people are listening to young people, because they're not. But that means that we should just be even more called to act. Like, we need to be impossible to ignore, because these people in power have a completely different agenda than we do. And if you think about the ways that they want to solve the climate crisis, it is not putting people first. It is prioritizing oil and gas and then creating false solutions and geoengineering to solve things. And we can't let that happen. So we need to be impossible to ignore, and we need to keep working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just jump right in and say this because I know we're short for time. The people in power do not fear us enough. They need to be afraid that we are coming for them and that by any means we are going to make sure a better world is possible and it is being built by an intergenerational community of care. And when I look at systematic shortcomings, I think about the fact that if you remember the video from earlier that Audrey puts together, we have a friend that helped us also like organize some of our actions. Frias Daphne. Daphne is a disabled activist that has to crowdfund at times for the cost of transportation. Oh, I think about the fact that not only do leaders like to tokenize us at times, they do not, they see that we're struggling, they do not want to acknowledge the struggle that it takes for students and actors to show up and to hold space at times, you know? So like the state of organizing, being in a very hard place for many people when it comes to like disability. So I just see like that, and like that gets me upset. But then I also understand that it takes us coming together, it takes us having the courage to stand up to these corrupt systems and the people that continue to be cogs in these corrupt systems, and to just hold them accountable and to put that fear in their heart that like we're not going to let you slide, we're not going to let you get away with this, our lives are on the line, and so we will continue to organize, you know. And yeah, that that is really just like what I see, like the fact that earlier this year we got the Superfund Act passed. Governor Hochul is still yet to sign it. What's up with that? Just the lack of urgency. So that's from like a governmental perspective, and then like I said, an organizing perspective. We need to stop tokenizing our our friends and comrades in struggle. Like essentially, we need to continue to uplift the work that they're doing, the work that is being done, and keep going at it. Acknowledge the work that's being done and keep going at it.
Thank you, Ade. And Pat?
Yeah, well, actually, I have a quick slideshow that I'd like to show. So yeah, Dror, you could start that, and I'll talk over that since it doesn't have any sound. This slideshow actually starts with an action that Third Act New York City did back in March of 2023, targeting Chase, and it goes into the summer of heat. And I just wanted to sort of show people, especially those who are joining us from outside New York, show them, what went on, a little bit of what went on. But to address the questions or the prompts, I think the obstacle is apathy among our electeds, and especially among those who've been, frankly, bought off by the fossil fuel industry. Getting them to realize the urgency of our situation is, as everybody has said, an uphill battle. I would say that apathy just in the civilian population, so to speak, is also a problem. But the flip side of that, I've learned through working in Third Act that there is a huge community out there in my age cohort. And I think actually a lot of our folks, joining us today are in my age cohort. So I want to speak directly to you. You're not alone. There are, we don't have an actual count, but there are upwards of 70,000 members of Third Act across the country. Third Act is organized in both location-based working groups. So for instance, Third Act NYC, there's a Third Act Bay Area, California, there's the Third Act Michigan. So location-based working groups, and also affinity-based working groups. As Monica mentioned earlier, there's Third Act lawyers, there's Third Act educators, there's Third Act faith, Third Act creatives, a couple of others that I'm forgetting to mention. So there's a place for everybody to plug in, everybody over 60, that is. And I would encourage you, if you're interested at all, to go to thirdact.org, www.thirdact.org, explore the website, find a way to get involved. So I think that's my pitch.
Thank you to the panelists for sharing your experiences and perspectives. I think you provided a wealth of information, and I'm going to encourage people at their various ethical societies, once the recording becomes available, share it. For those of you having watch parties right now, certainly have discussions, further discussions about how you can be engaged in this intergenerational movement or work across generations for that issues near and dear to your society's heart. So if you want to learn more about these organizations, Drawer has kindly dropped their links to their websites into the chat. And I will give our panelists like just a few seconds to say some closing words that they want to leave you with. If you learn anything else from this panelist, things that they want you to hear about. So I will start with Ade.
Yes. So don't tokenize youth. Youth is an identity every single person in this planet has held at one point. All of us has been a young person at one point. So you know the struggles and the tumultuous emotions that come with that. Now, compile that with a changing world, a changing climate, right? And that we are so acutely aware. Understand that we are struggling, some of us more than others, like I said, with accessibility issues. See how you can plug in and support, because self-care and community care are interconnected, and our liberations are interconnected. Thank you.
Monica.
I would just encourage people to show up. That's the most important thing. Join an organization that suits your time and your talent, and show up. Show up. And we have to do it together, because we can't do it alone.
Pat, any closing words?
I think I would just reiterate what both Ade and Monica have both said. Take care of yourselves, show up. You're not alone. We need to do this together. The only way we're going to achieve anything in this field is working together. So very happy to be part of this panel.
And Eliza and Helen.
Yes, I agree. Please show up. Just come. I mean, you're needed. Everyone maybe lots of people are already showing up, but I think we're all needed. And finding a group can be such a gift in your life, even if it had nothing to do with climate. You know, you're gonna find your people, and the movement needs you.
Yeah, and I would say that even if climate isn't in the headlines, it's still happening. So just think about it. Like, think about how there's so much that needs to change, and how we need to bring about a better world together, and that this fight is going to be ongoing until, this culture of environmental degradation goes away and we start putting people first. So just keep thinking about it. Like, don't let the government and everything just like make you forget that this is the issue of our generation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great advice. Again, I encourage people to go to the links for your websites to learn more about your organizations, and bring that information, the information that you shared, back into their societies. And as a final reminder, the AEU welcomes donations that support programs like this All Society platform. And we invite you, if you can, to donate to support programs like the ASP. And this ends the formal part of the program. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to join us. Thank you to our panelists. It was really interesting to hear from you and have you share with us. And I want everyone to have a safe rest of your day.